Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of my little black book, the vlog show, daily vlog show, where I talk into a microphone for an extended amount of time and you listen for some reason. Now, today I would like to talk about Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, fan. Love Taylor Swift. I loved, my first introduction to her was when I was a boy, when I heard her song Tim McGraw back in when her first studio album, Taylor Swift, released in 2007. Now, granted, when Fearless came out, uh that was kind of the last album. Her next album, Speak Now, was kind of the beginning of her transition to a more poppy, less country sound. I personally preferred it when she was pretending to have a country accent. That's just me. Now, here's the thing. Um, you can say whatever you want about Taylor Swift's music now because apparently her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, not great. Not good. Not good. Not good. Like people are like, and it's not haters that are saying this. It's Swifties. It is her fans that see her sort of forgetting her brand for a moment, right? Um, I've heard bits and pieces here and there. I am this I'm very much taking this as a synthesis of everything I've heard and read and followed up with the discourse. And here are the big criticisms. The problem is that Taylor Swift has always tried to reflect her fans. This comes in the way that she dresses. This comes in the way that she the way she talks about politics in the public eye. This is down to everything. But ultimately, all of it comes down to she is this small town girl who had a dream and was going and wanted to be. It is the story of her pick me anthem. Like she wears short skirts, I wear that one. She's gets the handsome football player and settles down. It's like this very country picturesque, fairy tale story. And it feels like after she's made her billions, like she's coming to wanting to the end of that. She even said herself talking about this album that this was the end. This was like the album she has always wanted to make. And it's not good. There are multiple aspects of it. And, this is a artist that these Swifties, these women that were once girls that glazed the ever loving hell out of Taylor Swift's ability as a lyricist and lyricism for years. And they're not bad. They're like or rather to say they're not good. I mean to say that was a misspeak on my part. I think one of the things there are multiple aspects on why it's bad. There is um the sex appeal aspect of it that she's trying to lean into. There is, I think, like an insecurity aspect of it. There is the I think a political aspect of it. And I think I want to touch on each of these individually. The political one is going to be the have the most to talk about, so I'm going to save that last. The first thing is sex appeal. You have your Sabrina Carpenters, you have your Chapel Rowans, you have your Charlie XCXs, girl first, girl forward, girly pop is all the rage now. And what do I mean by girl forward, girly pop? What I mean is sexy, pretty girly pop stuff, but not but for for the girls and the gays, not for men. Sabrina Carpenter is a very good example of this. Her aesthetic and style is very sultry, very sexy, very pretty, very pink, very poppy, but it is very much styled in such a way that the expectation of which is I am doing this for validation from other women that we're all sexy, we're all hot, we're all amazing, not for men. It's part of the reason why Sabrina's um album cover for the album Man's Best Friend, which is her, you know, getting her hair pulled, looking like she's about to give head to a guy in a suit, you know, is was controversial, but that all kind of blew over to a degree. Chapel Rowan is another, very much other of a, sex appeal for the gays and theys, specifically because she's a lesbian and she's like, I want women to find me. This is for the gays and theys. Like it's like Pink Pony Club, it's Good Luck Babe, it's all this stuff, and it's Chapel Rowan's very unique makeup and dress and all the stuff that is kind of integral to that. You know, you know. Chapel Rowan is very queer coded. Sabrina Carpenter very straight coded. These are but ultimately very much girl forward, girly pop, and this has been popping, bumping for the last few years. And so we get to an environment where what's the phrase? Where Taylor Swift sees this and is like, all right, there seems to be some overlap here with my fans. Let's do it. And that's how you get really um she's trying to do sexy material and it comes off flat because she centers Travis, her boyfriend, in a lot of it, to the point where she talks about like how big his dick, like how good his dick is, and how she likes having sex with it, and it falls flat. It clashes, with you can't be this kind of girl forward girly pop if you're not able to like quote unquote slay or serve or things like that, because those kinds of, style concepts start with queer and gay culture, and, girl forward kind of pop kind of emanates from that. Taylor Swift's never been that. She has always, always, always had, you know, a male centeredness be not maybe the entire part of it, but like a huge part of her discography. There is a reason why, like earned or unearned, justified or unjustified, she has the stereotype of like every time, like she's in a relationship with somebody, like if it don't work out, they're gonna have a diss track made about them. And this kind of brings me into the insecurity part. Travis Kelce has been with multiple black women and brown women. He very much has a type. And, in it very much feels like aside from the fact that she's a billionaire, like you take that off the table, not really Travis Kelce's type of woman that he would normally go for most of his life. But he did. It kind of feels more like something like he feels like he has to do to like either culturally or his family pushed him to, or like he feel like he didn't have like he needed something he had to do, whatever. We're not talking about Travis Kelce here, but there are lines in some of her songs talking about I don't need to slay, I don't, need to be savage, like just very like things very much targeted towards black and queer, like blackness and queerness, that's a little, a little icky, right? Um, I saw one TikTok user really talk about like why Taylor Swift can't slay. It's because, again, just to bring it back to an earlier point, a huge, 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 huge part of her brand is being a reflection of her fans, and a lot of basic ass white girls don't slay. And it's reflective of that. She's a multi-billionaire. She could have stylists lining up out the wazoo to have her surf cunt on whenever she wants, and she doesn't because that would make her unrelatable. And this is kind of where I want to bring, I want to touch on some of the politics of it. Taylor Swift is a billionaire. Taylor Swift is a billionaire. She is ostensibly out of touch. When you have that much money, you know, and you are that detached from the plight of working people, it is very difficult for you to relate to the average poor and working class people that make up the majority of your fan base. Now, here's the thing, and this is the big thing I want to note. Taylor Swift, up until this album, has, broadly speaking, portrayed a very stereotypically liberal woman, one who is not particularly concerned about, doesn't really follow politics, but when it matters, like when it like is in her face and she has to acknowledge it, she's gonna like m- do the logical liberal thing. She very much is emblematic of the liberal wine mom who just wants to go back to brunch and not think about all of this icky political stuff. And in that note of like when you are forced to confront it in the upcoming in the lead up to the 2024 election, Donald Trump called her out implicitly because the conservative movement was dogging on her because they knew that if she decided to at a moment's notice, she could rally her legions and legions and legions of prime demographic, 30 under crowd white women to go register to vote. She did register to vote. She did implore people to vote. She she did a voting drive, I believe in 2020 for Biden that got millions of young women to register to vote for the Democratic Party. Now, granted, most of them just registered. She just got them to register, period. She didn't say for which party. But when it comes to elections in the United States, when more people vote, Republicans lose, Democrats win. That is the way for the last 30 years it has always been. If more people show up to vote, Republicans lose. And they viewed that throughout the entire the Biden administration as an attack on them, which is why they spent like that year leading up to 2024 dogging on her, trying to sort of use the billions and billions and billions they've dumped into these multiple, conservative political machines and news networks and media apparatuses to sway people against her, which it obviously didn't fucking work. But even so, when Trump said like her and all her fans are just lonely cat ladies, she said something about it. Like I'm not, and like push back on it, and everybody's like, I'm a lonely cat lady too, and I would never vote for you, and it galvanized people. Obviously, not a fuck enough. Specifically, since she didn't fucking endorse Kamala until 2 days before Super Tuesday. But I digress. Oh, she has very much always had this kind of display as a liberal woman, which is fine. Now, I know that that this tangent has gone 20 miles away from the last point I was making, and as I kick you out of the white van to walk our way back, let us begin with talking about the announcement. She announced this album's release on her boyfriend's football podcast and her engagement to him at the exact same time. Remember how I said earlier how like she was very much a liberal woman, like, detached from politics, but bucks up when she needs to, and like that is representative of her base, and like she was very much trying to go for like a, you know, independent woman thing for most of her career. Like, yeah, it's still centered men a whole ton, but the attempts were made, and and she was going for like a more girl forward, girly pop kind of vibe this time, but that you don't do that by going on your boyfriend's podcast and announcing an engagement at the same time. A football podcast, by the way, that's listened to like a football, like the NFL, a organization that has historically been a deeply conservative institution. You pair that with, the slights and, weird phrasings and just like kind of objectionable things said about black people and the weird sexual stuff and, lines like you know, girls out here like talking about like how other girls are floozies, but I only look like you. I only have eyes for you. I want to have your babies. I want to have babies that look like you, and I want everybody in our neighborhood to look like you. Just like kind of stuff that could absolutely be misconstrued as like kind of like white nationalist, kind of like I want to live in a neighborhood of just with white people that look that like that. It is it's off-putting, to say the least. And this is kind of where I get to the penultimate point of like talking about the politics of things here. I think Taylor Swift wants has read the writing on the wall and wants to pivot to a more conservative look and aesthetic. She is a billionaire. She is a very wealthy woman, and she got that by appealing to whatever the macro cultural zeitgeist appeared to be in the moment. She started in, you know, '07, '08, as a country singer, and as the Obama presidency moved forward and the cultural zeitgeist and political nuances of the world visibly transitioned to a sort of post-Bush era, pre-Trump, you know, you know, fascism, and we were in this like 2013, 2014 Tumblr era of like love like faux progressivism, like this neoliberalism, permeating everything, girl power, independence, all that stuff. This is where she makes her transition, and this is where you get to say, to speak now. And then you get like Red in 1989. And this is emblematic, right, of a the change from like things that would be more amenable in a Bush era type of music to, okay, we're in the Obama era now. We are in the end of history, neoliberalism is the end all be all world. And then we get to like Trump's first term, and we sort of see like that ramp up, like that resistance liberal, that we won't stand for this stuff. And, she sees that in her base being a thing. And, that was kind of like the cultural thing, like the Trump winning Felt like a fluke. Then we get to the Biden years and the ongoing recession from COVID that persists to this day without there being any acknowledgement of it, and the suffering like deeply like pushes the country's cultural zeitgeist to the right, because the Democrats aren't offering anything, and they fight the left, like, and things to the left of them that would solve the problems much harder than they ever fight anything to the right. And so we are now in an environment where, at least 20 to 30% of the population are out and out fascists, and a lot, and every other media company like put their finger in the air and to feel where the wind was blowing and realize the Overton window has moved way far to the right. Roe v. Wade was overturned. Obergefell might be next, the gay marriage one. Loving versus Virginia might be on the table too, the interracial marriage ruling. And slowly but surely, it appears that it is not profitable to be, a left of center person. This liberal wine mom idea she had been cultivating for years. Now, granted, this perception is not reality. This is what she is viewing at a macro level without ever considering, hey, um, you are looking at this just from who is politically competent and who's not. The Democrats are not politically competent, and their media apparatus is not politically competent because what they would need to do to be popular is not popular with the donors, and the donors rule. Compound that with the fact that if you're a billionaire, you're doing pretty damn good in this economy. The Magnificent Seven are propping up the entire economy and keeping things going up despite everything else going down and all other indicators showing we're in a recession. You were able to take the money that you've made and put it into the stock market and with low rate investments and be able to like make money on top of your money without ever having to like worry about like deficits or things like that being like not having to be paid back. You know, if you're a billionaire, the what the Republicans and conservatives have been doing is looking pretty good for you. Sucks for everybody else. Even it sucks for everyone who only has like 10 or $20 million or $100 million, and everybody less than that. Everyone else is suffering. But if you're a billionaire, you're doing pretty fucking good. And so Taylor Swift does probably what any businesswoman would look at and say, I am able to make this much money, well, because of these people who have these types of ideas for money and life and what women should do and men should do and what a life of should look like. And so she pivots. She pivots. She pivots. Taylor Swift pivots from this liberal wine mom-esque type of branding, and she wants to pivot towards this trad wife type of aesthetic, like talking up her husband's sex appeal and talking about like settling down and having a couple kids because that's what she's probably going to do next. And then she's going to sell a bunch of, you know, a baby clothes and toy and merchandise line to go with it. And this sort of just leads us to a place where, you know, she is exuding this, and she took a gamble. She probably thought, okay, so the Republicans and in the conservative thing, cultural zeitgeist here has like shifted away on on a surface level, but because she is not interacting with day-to-day people, does not have any like real cognitive, like she just looks at like the landscape of the media landscape at her level and realizes, okay, I've got like it's time to pivot. The problem is that when you have an entire base of women who for a decade plus you have been feeding them the same types of media messaging and liberal ideas that you have this that you as the person who is selling them this have emulated the people watching you. You have turned into somebody that they do not relate to. Some probably do. She didn't make $1 billion off of a music career because there was only like there wasn't a lot of people, but the vast majority of her um following is not fucking with this new s- ma- Superman centered pick me anthem that has connotations of like white supremacy and capitulation to the new attempted social norms that the right wing is trying to push. And ultimately, this is why it's flopping. The big thing that I want to talk about it is the final thing I kind of want to talk about here is when you and I've talked about this at length on podcasts, on YouTube, and live streams, the whole kit caboodle. When it comes to conservative media, it sucks. Conservative media. I'm not talking about political punditry, YouTube. No, I'm talking about music and movies and games and all of these other things with with deliberate conservative messaging. Deliberate conservative messaging within like entertainment media does not do good. There are very few, if any, staunchly ultra conservative, like fascistic writers. There are conservative writers, not a whole ton. There are ultra conservative writers, which are even fucking less. And there's basically no fascistic writers that are like good or beloved. Almost all art and media is left of center in nature. The further to the right it goes, the less soul it has because it's less about telling a relatable story in a way that is meaningful and can touch you and is more about, you know, like constraining into these particular worldviews. And that is not a particularly appealing thing when you're trying to get some level of escapism. Be- the life of a showgirl is gives the vibes of what a conservative trying to make a girl forward girly pop album, and it fails because ultimately those two concepts are cannot collaborate with each other. Taylor Swift is a very rich woman. She is a multi-billionaire. She is a billionaire. You do not get $1 billion by not hurting a lot of people in either direct or indirect ways. Ultimately, ultimately, I feel like this is the downfall of Taylor Swift. I There is no cope. For people like me who have criticized Taylor Swift in the past and had Swifties come out the woodwork, nobody has come out the woodwork to fight this shit. I had one person on one short go to a bunch of my other shorts trying to shit talk me. All of their messages got deleted. It's probably because they finally heard the album and realized it was dog shit. And they felt guilt and they felt weird about leaving those because I was clowning on that. Fundamentally, Taylor Swift does not make great music. I don't think she is the Shakespeare of her time. I don't think she is, as much of a lyrical great mind as like a Beyonce, or I would even argue that the music coming from a Sabrina Carpenter and a Chapel Rowan is more musically interesting and complex than Taylor Swift. Listen. I was listening to Espresso while stocking shelves at work the other day. This is a probably one of the longer episodes I've done of Little Black Book, and just to wrap it up, Taylor Swift, I think, is going to start going on a downcline sometime in the near future. Not even necessarily because she's going to continue making bad music. I think it's because she has always had this fantasy, this arc of her life, this idea, this picturesque fantasy of small town girl with a dream and a guitar, having all like being this person that's like sings and travels the world, and then at the end of it all, marrying the hot football player and having her kids and like living this picturesque country lifestyle. And I think ultimately it's I don't think it's going to be because it's going to be a big part of it's going to be because she's moving in. She is at least no longer pretending to be something she's not, and she is being an out and out conservative person, which I think she always was. But I don't think her legions of fans are going to be receptive to that being the conclusion of somebody they spent their entire adolescence and adulthood idolizing. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, that is another chapter closed on my little black book. I appreciate you listening. Um, if you liked this episode, I've got other episodes and even more podcasts, all of which you can find at himedia.gg slash pods, or wherever you get your pods. And if and only if you have the financial wherewithal to do so, please consider leaving us a tip at himedia.gg/tip. Your monthly subscription at himedia.gg/tip gets you a ton of awesome perks, service through our Discord, which you absolutely should join at the link down below. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode on HIMediaTV. I have been your host, Evan from HIMediaTV, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.